I just got back from the dentist office, and when I walked in, I sat down, turned on my phone, looked at the news, and the first story I saw was Abrego Garcia has been brought back to the United States, and I was so happy. Not happy because I necessarily think he's not guilty of something, but happy because if he isn't guilty, at least now he has a chance to prove it, and I hope he'll be able to do that, and I hope he's not guilty of anything. And but the main thing was I couldn't believe they brought him back. I mean, I really thought they were never going to bring him back. And that indeed would be a constitutional crisis. I am so happy that they followed the court order. I mean, that says a lot. I mean, it means we haven't yet gone into full dictatorship, which is pretty surprising to me. So I'm happy to see that. I don't like the way this whole thing has been done. They've treated it like they were dictators the whole time, and they acted like they weren't going to obey the court order. So I'm not sure why they did finally, but I have a hint of why they did perhaps. Let's look at this article, and then I want to show you some video of his traffic stop in Tennessee about 3 years ago in 2022. And let's take a look at that together a little bit and kind of decide, is he guilty of something or not? Anyway, the article says mistakenly deported Salvadoran native Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been brought back to the United States so it's not all good news for Kilmar. He's brought back to the United States where he'll face criminal charges for allegedly transporting undocumented migrants within the U.S. Now, the first time I saw the video of the traffic stop where he was pulled over at night on a highway and the officers discovered he had 7 passengers in the car, and they were a little suspicious about that. One officer said, yeah, you know what he's doing, right? He's transporting illegal immigrants. But they let him go for whatever reason. He didn't have drugs. They had a drug dog sniff the car, nothing. He was not inebriated in the least. He was very polite to the officers, but he didn't have insurance papers and his license was suspended. So there were a few problems there. But when I first saw the traffic stop a few weeks ago, when I first saw the video when it came out, I thought, that guy's innocent. Look at him. He didn't do anything. Guilty people, when they're pulled over by cops, don't act that way. He was totally chill and had nothing to hide. He let them search everything they wanted to search. He didn't give them any pushback on that at all. Guilty people don't usually do that. Guilty people usually give a lot of pushback. So I thought, he seems like an innocent guy to me. But today I went and got the full video. It's more than an hour long. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched the first, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. I'm going to post that later in a separate video that I'll link to in this one so you can get to it. But yeah, there are definitely some questions there, and I want to bring them up. But let's first look at this article. It says more than 2 months after the Trump administration admitted to mistakenly deported. Let me just start that over. More than 2 months after the Trump administration admitted it mistakenly deported Abrego Garcia from Maryland to his native El Salvador, a federal grand jury has indicted him for allegedly transporting undocumented immigrants within the United States. A 2-count indictment, which was filed under seal in federal court in Tennessee last month and unsealed Friday, alleges Abrego Garcia, 29, participated in a years-long conspiracy to haul undocumented migrants from Texas to the interior of the country. Now, that's going to be interesting in a minute when we look at a Google map of his route. Abrego Garcia's return follows a series of court battles in which the Trump administration repeatedly said it was unable to bring him back, drawing the country toward the brink of a constitutional crisis. Yes, it did do that, when the administration failed to heed the Supreme Court's order to facilitate his return. Remember, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that they had to facilitate his return. And Stephen Miller in the White House on the day, no, I forget who the president was meeting with that day. I was going to say it was Zelensky, but maybe it wasn't. Anyway, a reporter asked, "What do you think about this 9-0 loss you had?" And Miller turned around and said, "That wasn't a loss. That was a 9-0 win. That was in our favor." He just twisted the whole thing around. Like he couldn't tell the president he lost 9-0. The president probably would have fired him. But he told the president he won 9-0. And you wonder why the president has some of these wacko ideas? Because he hires wacko people who feed them to him. Not that he's not predisposed to think of them on his own anyway, but all right. Abrego Garcia's return follows a series of court battles. Okay. He made his initial court appearance today, this evening, in the Middle District of Tennessee, Friday, June 6, 2025, where a judge was to take up the government's motion to hold him in pretrial detention because he poses a danger to the community and a serious risk of flight, and no condition or combination of conditions would ensure the safety of the community or his appearance in court. That's pretty standard what they say when they want the court to hold somebody. If convicted at trial, the defendant faces a maximum punishment of 10 years imprisonment for each alien he transported, said the government's motion, which also contained an allegation not included in the indictment that one of Abrego Garcia's co-conspirators told authorities that Abrego Garcia participated in the murder of a rival gang member's mother in El Salvador. Well, I don't think they can use that in court here. The United States can't prosecute crimes that happened in other countries. Those other countries have to do that. So I don't know why they're even bringing that up. And you can get these guys to say anything, if you threaten them with a little jail time, especially if you threaten them with jail time in El Salvador. Jeez. Okay. Garcia's attorney in an online press briefing called the charges against his client an abuse of power. Now here's where it gets interesting, because there are two sides to this story. There's their side of the story that he was transporting immigrants, and there's this other side of the story where the lawyer's saying they're engaging in an abuse of power. And we have seen them abuse their power so many times since January 21st, or whatever the date was when he was inaugurated. But yeah, so we know they abuse their power. So in this case, the attorney, defense attorneys normally say things like that. But in this case, we've seen this administration abuse their power many times. He says they'll stop at nothing at all. We've also seen them stop at nothing. Even some of the most preposterous charges imaginable, just to avoid admitting that they made a mistake, which is what everyone knows happened in this case, said his attorney. And that's true. We know that's Trump's personality. He'll do anything to avoid admitting he made a mistake. He will throw anybody under the bus, no matter what the consequences will be for that poor person. So that could be true. I mean, my bent is to believe that. I have a pre-trial bias to believe that might be true. So, but then what I saw today on the tape, when I looked at it again, gave me kind of second thoughts, which I'll share with you in a minute. The decision to pursue the indictment against Garcia led to the abrupt... now, here's where it gets interesting. And here's where Garcia's attorney, when he said this is an abuse of power and they're doing this just to avoid admitting making a mistake, this lends credence to that belief. Listen to this. The decision to pursue the indictment against Abrego Garcia led to the abrupt departure of Ben Schrader, a high-ranking federal prosecutor in Tennessee. Schrader's resignation was prompted by concerns, get this, prompted by concerns that the case was being used or pursued for political purposes. All right, that's what I'm predisposed to believe. And now the federal prosecutor in Tennessee has resigned because he's saying that. He's saying he believes this is for political reasons, which means I think he's saying there's no evidence here. This is one of their fake cases. And if it is, let's all pray to God that the court system will work true justice for this man. All right? If it's not, then, he gets what he gets. Schrader, who spent 15 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Nashville and was most recently the chief of the criminal division, declined to comment when contacted. I mean, you can't blame him. You know, he goes and says any of this in public, they'll destroy him. Now, listen to this, because their story doesn't even make sense. The government's, what they're accusing him of, there's a contradiction in this accusation, I believe. The alleged conspiracy, they say, spanned nearly a decade and involved the domestic transport, they say, of thousands of non-citizens from Mexico and Central America, including children, in exchange for thousands of dollars, according to the indictment. All right. So they're saying he transported thousands of people. All right. So thousands would have to be at least 2,000, or you're in singular thousands, you're just at 1,000. To make thousand plural, you need at least 2,000s. So it has to be at least 2,000 for them to say thousands. Now get this. Abrego Garcia is alleged to have participated in more than 100 such trips, according to the indictment. All right? 100 trips. His car carries at maximum 7 passengers. That's how many people were in the car along with him, so 8 people total, when the cops pulled him over in Tennessee. So he would have to make at least 300 trips, because I'm sure, unless he's at full capacity on every trip. If he's on full capacity every trip of 7 people, he would have to have made 285 trips to carry 2,000 people, all right? And more likely he would have to have done something over 300, because I don't think you're at full capacity on every trip. I don't know. I don't know anything about that business of carrying undocumented immigrants around the country. All right, so let's see. Abrego Garcia is the only member of the alleged conspiracy charged in the indictment. Okay, that's interesting. He's the only one charged. Attorney General Pam Bondi at a Friday afternoon press conference thanked Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele for agreeing to return Abrego Garcia to the United States. Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country. Of course they did. You know, they said they couldn't do it. They have no say over what a foreign country's leader does. So this shows the lie to that. It exposes the lie that they told earlier. Bondi said that if Garcia is convicted of the charges upon the completion of his sentence, he will be deported back to his home country of El Salvador. So if he's innocent, I do hope that he will be found innocent and have a fair trial. The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, okay, a minute ago it was 10 years, now it's 9, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring, Bondi said. They found this was his full-time job. He wasn't a contractor, as he claims, construction contractor. He was a smuggler of humans and children and women. He made over 100 trips, the grand jury found, smuggling people throughout the country, throughout our country. So who knows what evidence the grand jury was presented with? You know, they can get an indictment very easily. They may have just presented the video of the police officers in Tennessee pulling him over, and they could have said, "Look, he had 7 passengers in the car. What were they all doing there?" And I don't know. It'll be interesting. It's going to be very interesting when this goes to trial. From the beginning, this case has made one thing painfully clear. The government had the power to bring him back at any time. That's right. Of course they did. Instead, they chose to play games with the court and with a man's life, his lawyer said, Sandoval Moshenberg. We're not just fighting for Kilmar. We're fighting to ensure due process rights are protected for everyone. Because tomorrow, this could be any one of us if we let power go unchecked. That's right, if we ignore our Constitution. It looks like Trump capitulated again. Trump always capitulates, which is good. We're glad that he does. But I don't think his base will be glad that he did. Let's see if they rise up against him on this. They won't, but it'll be interesting to watch. In a detention memo filed Friday afternoon in court in Tennessee, Federal prosecutors moved to have Abrego Garcia held in pretrial custody because they say he poses a danger and all that. If convicted at trial, he faces a maximum punishment of 10 years imprisonment for each alien he transported. Now, if it was just for one alien, I would trade 10 years in an American prison for life in that gulag in El Salvador any day. But, normally a judge will sentence somebody like this to, maybe 10 or 15 years for something like that. If he's found guilty of doing it to, say, 7 or 8 or 10 people, I don't think they would give him a life sentence for that. I really don't. I don't know what the sentencing guidelines say about it. I'd have to look at the guidelines to see what they say, but I doubt it would go much over 20 years for something like that. All right, Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran native who had been living with his wife and children in Maryland, was deported in March to that horrible prison in El Salvador. And okay, let's see. I think the rest of this is pretty much just what we all already know. And there's his picture. Does he look like an illegal immigrant smuggler? I don't know. He could. All right, let's look at this video. This is the video from the traffic stop he had in Tennessee. And this was in 2022. It was November 30th, 2022. Now, I'm just going to play a little bit. I'm going to post the whole thing on another video, and I'll link to that video from this one down in the notes. All right. But I just want to show you, because I want you guys to make a decision on what you think based on the full video, because it's really different watching the whole thing than it was for me watching a couple of excerpts from it. When I watched a couple of excerpts, I thought, he doesn't seem guilty to me. When I watch this, I see clues that maybe he could be guilty of something along those lines. So let's take a look at this first couple of minutes.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
Good, and you?
All right.
Everything good?
You got a bunch of people in here, don't you?
It's one for shit. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where are you working at?
Where?
Where?
San Luis, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
All right, he said San Luis, Spanish for St. Louis.
Okay.
But I'm from Maryland.
Okay. Now the reason I stopped you, we was running 75 down through here.
75?
Yeah. Of course, this is 65 through here.
I know. I'm going to 70.
All right, they go back and forth a bit about the speed he was traveling at. He doesn't argue with them. He doesn't give them a hard time, which was pretty nice. Let me go to here. Now, I would just watch the passenger, this guy in the passenger seat. Just watch him. I've watched about 20 minutes of this so far. He only looked at the officer once. When the officer first walked up to the car, he just very briefly went like that. The rest of the time, he keeps his eyes straight ahead like this. He looks like a stone, like a statue, which I think is a little odd for an innocent person to do that. Okay, let's imagine he was transporting illegal immigrants. He would have told them, if he's good, and he looks like he would be good at this, because he's smooth, he's nice, he's kind. He would have told them, look, nobody say a word. Let me do all the talking. That's what it looks like happened before, when the cop siren went off and they first started to pull him over. He probably said, let me do all the talking. Don't say a word. I've said that to passengers when I've been pulled over. Let me do all the talking. And they have, which was good. So check this out for a minute. Watch this guy. Totally stone-faced.
So where do y'all live
straight
at?
ahead.
Where are you living?
Look at that. This officer is right next to him, right to his right. And he's just looking straight ahead. Why? Why can't he look the officer in the eye? He looks a little scared to me, honestly.
I live in Maryland.
Maryland?
Yeah, Oxon.
Whose vehicle is it?
What, excuse me?
Whose car is it?
It's to my boss.
Your boss?
My boss, yeah.
Where's he live? Where's your boss live?
My boss right now is staying in Maryland, but he lives in Texas.
Okay.
Houston, Texas.
Okay, so, well, let's see what he does here with the paper.
Thanks, sir.
So he gives him the papers. And then here's the thing. He said he was traveling from St. Louis, San Luis, and he's going to Maryland. But he's being stopped here in Tennessee. What route from St. Louis to Maryland goes through Tennessee? No route does. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I can get this off the screen, there we go. All right, check this out. This is the route that Google Maps gives you from St. Louis to Maryland. So Maryland's over here on the right, St. Louis is over here on the left. I know you can't see my cursor very well, but okay, you start from St. Louis, you have two route suggestions. One is 821 miles, one is 869 miles. And the first route goes through Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Looks like maybe a little bit of West Virginia or Delaware, and then to Baltimore. All right, the second route goes through Illinois. Of course, you have to go through Illinois when you're going east from St. Louis. Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky this time, and West Virginia. And it looks like that might go through Delaware as well. And then to Baltimore, if that's where he was going to Maryland. But anyway, that goes to Maryland. That's the normal route that someone would go. Now check this out. This is the route from St. Louis through Tennessee to Maryland. This is over 1,000 miles. The other one was over 800 miles. So why would you add around 150 to 200 miles to your trip? Why are you going through Tennessee? What's in Tennessee? He told the officer he was going from St. Louis to Maryland. That doesn't go through Tennessee. So when I saw that, all right, that brought up some questions. That sounds a little sus, a little suspicious, a little suspect. So I'm trying to figure that out. Now check out this third route. If you go from way down here in the left-hand corner is McAllen, Texas. That's a border town. And I've been there and spent some time there and had a great summer in that area 1 year in college. It was fun. But if you go from McAllen, Texas to Maryland, which is up here in the upper right-hand corner, see where it says Washington, D.C.? That's basically Maryland. All right. Both of these routes go through, guess which state? Tennessee. There you go. One goes through Nashville and one goes through Chattanooga. All right. The only route, normal route that somebody could take that would go from, say, Texas to Maryland would go through Tennessee. There's one third route here that goes through Louisiana by New Orleans and then up through Mobile, Alabama and Montgomery, Alabama. It's kind of the eastern route. It goes through Atlanta, then Charlotte, North Carolina, and then Virginia. The eastern route that doesn't go through Tennessee from Texas, the only route that doesn't go through Tennessee from Texas is this route, 1,800 miles. And he wasn't on that route because he was in Tennessee. All right. The second route is 1,793. It's almost 1,800 miles. Anyway, wow, that's a long trip from Texas to Maryland. But yeah, I would rather go from St. Louis. That's a lot shorter, 1,000 miles shorter, it looks like. But yeah, so this is the only route that could take someone through Tennessee into Maryland that's, a plausible route with the government accusing him of transporting migrants. And where would you transport them from? Texas is a really hot area for that kind of activity. So it's reasonable to think he could have been going from Texas to Maryland. That's how he would have ended up in Tennessee. I don't know what city the stop was made in or where it was near, but this route you go through Memphis, Nashville, and Knoxville. And the second route you go through Chattanooga and Knoxville. So I don't know. I'll have to find out where he was stopped, actually. That would be interesting to find out. If it's one of those three cities, that's right on the route from Texas to Maryland, not from St. Louis to Maryland. So that's something to think about, right? And that's all I have to display for you. But I'm going to finish up this other video of the traffic stop. I'm just going to cut out the parts, the officer walks to the car. He sits in the car for 5 or 10 minutes. Nobody talks. I'm going to cut all those out for you so you don't have to sit through those. And I'll post it on a new separate video. And I'll post, like I said, a link to it from this video. Okay? It will be interesting to watch. I would like to hear if you have a different opinion after watching more of the video than you might have had when you just watched a few minutes of it, if you watched a few minutes of it. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you next time.